Okay, officially recording. So, assignment 5 is to set up a Autocad template file. On Thursday, we'll look at exporting DWG files from Revit using our in-class assignment 5. And so along with your assignment that you'll turn in on Thursday night, you'll want to include the exported view, probably be like an east elevation, and we'll show how to kind of import it into Autocad, explode it, trace it, do whatever you need to do to put it in your template file, and not have an extremely large amount of layers come into your template file as well. So we'll explore that on Thursday, and that, even though it's not listed in here, will be expected to be in the file so that you know how to do that. Okay. Yeah. So that's that. We briefly talked about in-class assignment 5. Hopefully assignment 5 we will get done mostly today, so you guys won't have to focus on that over the next 2 days. So those that have not gotten in-class assignment 5 completed will be able to work through and get that done and turned in for some points. I always throw that in there, some points. Again, course evaluation, it's like the worst time to mention it after I kind of like make fun of everything. Please though, seriously, fill them out, get the extra credit points, and it'll give us some good feedback about where to move this class in the future. And it probably won't be with me, so it'll help them out though. So again, monster points if everybody does it. Only 50 of you do it, 50%. Not so many points, but at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and open up AutoCAD 2015. Where do we start today? Like blank stare. I don't know. Where did we start this morning? Layers? Okay, so when you open up AutoCAD 2015, it has a similar display page that you would see like in Revit. It's just a little different. I'm going to go to the A at the top, and I'm going to open up, or not open, but I'm going to create a new file. And that brings us to select template. And we want this ACAD, A-C-A-D file. That's our template to start. Typically that'll, if you're ever going to do any drawing in AutoCAD, that'll be the file that you'll want to open. That's kind of the standard template file. So, I'm going to close out some of this stuff. Yours should be looking like mine right now. We have a ribbon similar in respect to Revit, where you have your drawing capabilities of line, polyline, circles, and arcs. And if you hit the pull down arrow, you have multiple options of how to draw a circle. We'll explore a couple of those later on. Same with arc. There's like a ton of different ways to draw an arc. And then this is kind of similar to Revit, where you have your move tool, your copy tool, your scale, your mirror, your rotate. The trim tool is a little bit different. It's a trim and extend tool. So in Revit, this is kind of one tool. In AutoCAD, it's two tools. So either you're trimming a line to something or you're extending a line to something. There's an offset command. We're not going to work in the 3D kind of view. AutoCAD can do 3D. It's fairly clunky though, because it never was originally designed to do 3D. They just kind of kept adding on to the package. So it's really best for 2D line work. And lines are vectors basically, so they're just continuous lines that don't necessarily go on forever and ever, but when you set a dimension to them, they'll stop. But it's a vector line versus like Rasta line, which would be really pixelized. Let's see. So if I click, this is our quick access toolbar here. If I click this little layout tab, it allows me down here to switch between model space and what they call paper space. Paper space, literally what that means is it's defining right now an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and this viewport that I just selected and can stretch out here is is model space looking at it through a viewport. So if I double click in here, it opens up the viewport, which is this model space. So even though it changed from black to white in the background, it is model space. Still have the grid lines turned on, so you can kind of tell that that's what those two things are. When we have, I'm going to type PS to get out of model space. I'm back in paper space, maybe. I just hit pan. That's not what I wanted. Paper space. Back in paper space, I can select the viewport. When I'm in model space, I can't select the viewport because I'm inside the viewport. Okay? And I guess if you double click outside in this gray area, you're back in paper space. And so I can select this viewport, and down here at the bottom right hand side, we have a scale. If you hit this down arrow here, we can start to change the scale of the viewport. So if we wanted to see this, print this at 1/4 inch equals a foot, that viewport is now reading 1/4 inch equals a foot. In model space, you generally always want to draw 1:1. So the only time you really change your scale is when you're in a layout space or paper space, and change the scale of the viewport to what you want to print out. So whether that's 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, I don't know, 1:1, but this is where you make that change. And so if anybody's ever been familiar or gone and used the laser cutter at all, I know there's a couple people in here that have. When you take your file to Jay and he asks you what scale it is, he basically opens up paper space and sets your scale. And so you want to be drawing everything in model space to full scale, 1:1, and then when he switches to layout space and selecting the viewport allows you to manipulate the scale. Have I beat that? Yeah, okay. Sometimes I don't know. I need to repeat it another time. What else are we doing? So let's jump back into model space, and I'm gonna just select my line tool here to start, and as I click once and drag, it starts to draw a line. And I've got some options down here how I want to draw that line. If I select dynamic input, you can start to see that my distance 38 inches, 41 inches. If I hit the tab button, I can start to change the angle and escape out of that. And it also starts to give a dimension up top too, so it kind of works both ways. But you see the line's not straight, and it's really pain in the butt to get the line straight. So what they have is called an ortho mode, and basically it locks to 90 degrees, 0, 90, 180, 90, and so you can easily draw straight lines. I don't really like to draw with the dynamic input on, because it kind of just gets really messy. But if you need to draw like a specific angle, you can say show snap. I think you have to have both on actually. And I'm going to turn my ortho off. Wait a second. I'm sorry, I had the wrong one. Let's turn that off. This little round circle, if you pull this arrow down, you can start to snap to particular angles. So if you want to snap to a 30, 60, 90, 120, you can start to use those snap options to draw certain angles that you want to draw. Turn those off, and let's turn ortho back on and just draw a line. It doesn't really matter, and I'm going to escape out of the command. This is called object snap or on snap. Most of this stuff you can also type in like on snap, and it'll turn it on or off depending on what you type in. But we can turn that off, and if I click on my line tool, you'll notice that I can't snap to any midpoints or endpoints. If I turn, I'm going to turn my dynamic off. If I select and turn the on snap on, you can start to you can manually select different parts that you can snap to, so like intersections, tangents of circles, nearest points, but kind of standard is the end point, midpoint, center point, and nodes. So when it's on, you can see my cursor will snap to an endpoint, midpoint, endpoint, and you can start to draw. The middle mouse button should pan for you. If you hold it in, even if you're drawing a line, you can still pan around. And it'll want to try to snap. You can get to the intersection, right? So it's at a 90-degree angle, but sometimes if you're scrolled out, it'll snap to the end point, so you want to be careful about that. And then it's no longer a straight line. So if I scroll in here, see how that line's not straight anymore because I snapped to that end point. So I'm going to Control Z that whole thing, I guess, which is undo. And I need to put my snap back on. Turn off this ortho thing. Drives me nuts. But it will snap to a perpendicular surface here. So I can go ahead and click, and then click escape. And my zoom extends. It's like not letting me pan around the page. I love it. So fun. Z, enter, and then C, you can like zoom to, no, that's getting too complicated. But anyway, Z, enter, A, basically enters all, zooms kind of the entire work area. You can also double click, and that's called zoom extends, and it zooms in on everything that you've drawn. So if you find that you zoomed in and you're like way out here, there's probably something drawn out in space somewhere. It's a good likelihood that there's something else drawn out there and you don't really know what it is. So, trim tool. I want to trim this up. There's a couple of ways I can do that. One, I can use the trim tool. So I select first the line that I want to trim to, press enter, and then select what I don't want to keep. So it's like completely opposite from Revit. So that's one way to trim a line. Another way is we can use the fillet command. You can also type in any of these commands. So fillet, and basically is a radius fillet, but we're doing it at a radius of 0. And so when you click on those two, it's similar to the trim command in Revit. If that makes sense. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. I totally lost what I was doing. So, trim command, fillet command. If you start selecting, this thing is crazy. I don't quite understand this tool yet. Oh, now it's acting normal. Did you see what happened that first time when I had it selected? No, never mind. It's working now. So you can click and drag, select all the lines. You can do it from either direction. You know, you can press the copy. This, have you seen this? Why does it do that?
3ds Max does the same selection, type of selection.
3ds Max is retarded. Okay, so window lasso. Press spacebar to cycle the options found.
You just want to read
Spacebar. Always read the command line. I don't do that very well. 2015, literally opened it last night for the first time and was like, whoa, I'm used to 2012. Classic mode, no ribbon, no anything. So, it's been a little awkward. I've had like a really steep learning curve. So at any rate, using the copy command, you select a point of reference and then you can copy multiple objects if you want. So, if you were setting up laser cut boards, for instance, you would probably, See, this is what kills me. I'm going to waste a lot of time here talking about this, but if you draw 1-to-1, then you have to do the 18 inches by 32 inches. What, multiply that by 12? Right? So, since I'm bad at math and spelling, 18 times 12, 216. So if I typed in 216, and type L for line, and what do we do? Good grief. 32 times 12, 384. Type in 384, enter. What was the other one? 212? 216? Take your word for it. Oh, it works. So that would be the size of, in full scale. That is stupid. That's a terrible command. Terrible command. And it won't even let me erase it because I have to type E to hit erase. Select all those lines. Enter.
You get rid of it in your options that you edit the selection. You can uncheck that box that was over to the last one.
In these options?
Oh, you type options.
Huh?
You're in a command.
Well, I know, but options will bring up this options.
Yeah, if you go to selection on the top tabs, and you down there you uncheck the lasso and check the box above it.
Which one are we looking at here?
To your left. Go up. Uncheck. Yeah, uncheck that. And check the box above it.
Love it.
Yeah, and that'll get rid of the lasso.
You the man. You are the man. A for that guy. We're going to get to the options later on today. Yeah, that's an annoying option. Lots of annoying options in AutoCAD. All right, so get back on track. Let's talk about template files and creating one of those guys. Hopefully you don't know how to do that and you'll learn something new today. I guess just to finish up, we probably want to be working in architectural scales. I'm not really sure what that changes, to be honest with you, but that's okay. So, units, if I can spell right, is where you can start to change your drawing units. I like to keep mine in inches. Some people prefer feet. You still have to type in like 5 with a little dash mark to get 5 feet, or 5 is just 5 inches. It's whenever you're specifying length. So I've never really had a problem with just leaving it in inches. angles, probably decimals, precision of that. You know, if you're making a part of some sort, you might want to change your precision. The length type, if you specify anything that's like remotely close to a 1/16 of an inch, contractor will kill you. He literally will. So the precision of that is probably good. I think generally it's like 1/2 an inch, maybe, about the max they do. At any rate, I'm off on a tangent. So we have our layer properties here. If we select on that, it brings up a layer dialog box. I like to leave this open on my screen, just kind of off to the side here. It allows you to easily create layers, and you can close it with this little auto hide button, so when you go off of it, it goes away. I always forget which way it works. Yeah. So in here is where you can start to create multiple layers, and so every layer is just a 2D representation, like on top of each other. So basically you can have multiple layers and multiple lines, and each line could be on a different layer, and you can keep them separated. You can turn them on and off. So if you were working on like floor plans, you would probably have like level 1 on one layer, level 2 on another layer, and they'd be literally on top of each other. So you turn one off to view the other, something like that. I don't really use AutoCAD to draw floor plans, but you can utilize it to do that and get your line weight set. But one thing I don't like is that you have to change your line weights based upon the scale of your drawing. So you have to kind of play with it to get, when you go to print, to play with your line types. Whereas in Revit or BIM software, those automatically change based upon your scale. Also, you're drawing 2D versus a 3D representation. But to create new layers, we can click on this little button here with the little star to create a new layer. And I'm just going to put all the layers that we need in here for our template. So I'm going to start with our Rasta engraving layer. And I'm going to type in light, and I'm going to change my color of that layer to being red, and we're going to only deal with these colors here. We're not going to mess with any of these. So I'm going to use this red color, click OK, and I'm going to change that to stay open all the time. We can start to change our line type in here as well. So if you can load in other line types if you want. We're not going to do that today. But say you wanted to show a center line on a circle, or I don't know, I guess I haven't used a center line in like 6 years. But at any rate, property lines, things like that, you can start to you know, change your line style to, you know, maybe you are depicting a gas line or something above a hidden line, so you'd create a layer for hidden lines, which would represent, like in a floor plan, it would represent like a cabinet or something that's above the cut plane, things like that. But I'm going to cancel that for now. I just want to show you that you can make those changes. And our line weight, we want to be set to 0, 0, 0, 0. I'm gonna click OK. And I'm gonna create a new layer, and it copies whatever layer I had selected. It copies those presets down, and we're gonna do, oops, I'm gonna right click, rename layer, roster, engraving, deep, and we're gonna make this green, neon green, and line weight's good. Select another new layer, and we're gonna do vector engraving, light, and that color is yellow. Create a new layer. Vector engraving deep. And that color is blue. The dark blue, not the cyan. New layer. Vector cutting. Interior. And that's magenta. And vector cutting exterior. And that's cyan. Cyan, whatever you want to call it. So these are the basic layers for the laser cutter. Vector cutting exterior would be any exterior lines that you have. Excuse me. So, like the exterior cut line of your wall would be in blue or cyan. If you had any windows on that wall that you were cutting out, you put them on the vector cutting interior layer. If you were engraving like CMU bricks, a pattern, a hatch pattern or anything like that, you'd use your vector engraving light or vector engraving deep to do that kind of stuff. Or if you were putting in your reveals, you would use the light or deep vector engraving. And the raster engraving and is basically meant for text. You can do text in vector engraving, but you have to have like a zero. It's almost easiest to just do any text with the raster engraving, but you can play around with different thicknesses of text. You can get a really thin text. Sometimes vector engraving will work for that. I always just end up doing raster engraving, but raster engraving takes a long time to do. So if you want to be on Jay's good side, you won't use it much unless you have to. So like if you were, making a little plate to put on your model or something, and you'd want to etch out, your name, the scale, and your class or something like that, then maybe you make a little plate that uses raster engraving to get that text in there, things like that. But besides for that, it's pretty self-explanatory about which line type to use in which situation. So now that we have these line types set up, we want to set up some layouts so that when we select on our layout, this paper size is basically our 18 by 32, and our second layout is 18 by 24, the two sizes that we have for laser printing or cutting. So if we type in plot plotter manager into our command line, which is this line down here. It should bring up a file menu that has basically predefined plotters on here. We're going to go ahead and right click DWG to PDF and copy it and paste it right back into the same location. And we're going to rename it. Anybody guess what we're going to rename it? Laser cutting, and I'm going to name this one 3 because obviously I've done this twice already today. Well, technically once. I did the other one last night. At any rate, laser cutting 3. And now that we've created that, we're going to go ahead and open it. And it brings up a plotter configuration editor. And we can click device and document settings, and under user defined paper sizes we can click custom paper size, and we're going to add 2 paper sizes. We want to start from scratch, click next, and we want to define this one as 32 inches by 18 inches, and click next. And we want to leave a margin on this because the laser cutter won't print anything within a 1/4 inch of the edge of our 18 by 32 board. So we're going to leave this at 0.25 all the way around, and click next. And we're going to name this paper size 18 by 32. Maybe attach laser cutter to the end of it. Click next. File name we want to keep the same, and let's finish that. So let's create one more, and this one will be 24 inches by 18 inches. Click next. 0.25 of an inch all the way through. Paper size name 18 by 24. Laser cutter. Click next and finish. Okay, so now that we have those, we're going to click OK, and that's like pre-settings in this file type. So we can now close this out. And if we go to our Layout 1 tab and we right click it, the Layout tab itself down at the bottom, we can select Page Setup Manager. And we want to modify Layout 1. I'm going to click Modify. And that brings up our plotter screen, basically, where we're defining the printer name, which should be our laser cut yours will be just laser cut. And then our paper size should be in here, our 18 by 32. And our plotter area, we want to plot to extends. So the extends of the paper, of the space itself. And we want to center the plot. And that puts it, the viewport, in the center of this 18 by 32 rectangle. and the scale is 1:1. And all this stuff we can just kind of leave for the moment. We don't need to mess with that. Click OK, and you'll see that the paper size changed to our 18 by 32 paper size. And with my orthos on, I'm just going to extend my viewport a bit. Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter, right? Because now we can select the viewport itself, and let me just see what happens here. Pretty sure if we hit 1:1, now I'm all screwed up. Forget about that box. At any rate, when you set your viewport to whatever scale you want to get your laser cut print at, right, you can start to figure out your sheet sizes with your material in this viewport. So you can start to, when we import something full scale and then set our viewport to whatever scale we want to laser cut at, we should be able to start to set up our file here to print where we want to print. It's kind of hard to do that without having anything in here, so next week or next Thursday we'll actually import something and it'll make a little more sense. But at any rate, that's 18 by 32. We can set up our second layout, layout 2. We can modify, and again we want to select our laser cut print to DWG, DWG to PDF laser cutting file or plotter, and then our paper size 18 by 24, extends, center the plot 1:1, and close. Change our viewport size. If you happen to delete your viewport, which is very easy to do, if you type in viewport, it brings up a dialog box where you can select a single viewport or multiple viewports depending on what you want to show. And click OK, and it creates another viewport. I think. Did it create another viewport? Let's just delete this one. Type in viewport, single viewport, and I think we need to draw it actually. Yeah. And so that creates a new viewport if you happen to delete your viewport. So let's go back into model space, and if I hit this little arrow button here under properties, I guess I can hit it right away too. Brings up a properties dialog box. I like to leave that open too on the side of my screen. What this allows me to do is, let's just say we have a bunch of lines in here. I'm gonna hit CO for copy. And just copy this line a bunch of times. I can select this line and easily change the layer that it's on here. So if I want it to be on one of these other layers, I can very easily change that. If I want to change a bunch of them, of course it'll say this varies. I can go ahead and make the change to all those. You want to make sure when you're setting up your file, your color is by layer. Your layer is a particular layer that you want to put the line on. Your line type is by layer, and your line weight is by layer. If for some reason one of those says varies or is by block or continuous, the laser cutter isn't going to recognize it. So always set this up by layer. What else do we got going on here? So let's save. I'm going to go ahead and, well, I got to hit E first for erase. And let's erase these lines. And I'm going to save this file. And under file types, I want to save it as a DWT file, which is a template file. And that brings me to, it automatically navigates to where it looks for template files to save it as under. And we want to label it our ACAD laser cut template. And I'm going to label mine 3 since I already have a few in here. And click save. And template options, just leave that alone and click OK. So if we close this file, we can create a new file, and it's here under the templates, laser cutting template. So once we've set this thing up and saved it as a template file, you never have to set this up again, which is nice. Gets annoying every time you want to do a laser cut file and you have to open up a new file and put all these layers in with the correct colors and stuff. It's just nice to have a template that you can open up straight away. What else did we talk about first class that I'm missing right now? Click line.
Circles. Did you do polygon?
No. Let's talk about properties first, or options. Let's go back to the options bar. So there's two ways you can get to that. You can either click on the A and go down to options. That brings up our options. Or you can type it in. It also brings it up. Under display, you can start to change our color scheme to a light gray versus a dark gray. Super fun. You can change the background color of our 2D model space to being white or some other color if you want. Kind of throws me for a loop. I like to see it black so that I know that I'm in model space, but you can change the color of that. Let's go ahead and cancel this and go to a layout. Speaking of, you can right click this and rename it to saying 18 by 32 so that you know that that's 18 by 32. You can right click this and rename it 18 by 24. Something I neglect to tell people. So you can also start to, under display, take away your display paper background and your printing area, and that basically eliminates your paper space. So if you ever want to do that, the option's there. You could just do one. So if you want to take away the printable area, which is that dashed line that we set up, the margins, you can do that as well. You can change where you how you save your file. If you want to back save it to something different, you can change the permanency of when you go to do a save as, what AutoCAD file type it saves it as. You can also change the default of your printer when it comes up for plotting. There's so much stuff in here that you can change, it's almost overwhelming. Graphic performance is a big one, so if your graphics card isn't recognized, mine's not, I've turned off hardware acceleration here under graphic performance. If you turn it on and your graphics card, video card is not one that it recognizes, sometimes it doesn't like you and crashes. So I just turn it off right away. Yeah, this stuff you'll never get into. So when your units are set to unitless, it defaults here to inches. Drafting, I don't think I've ever changed any of this stuff before. Selection, as we found out tonight, you can change this to allow press and drag on objects instead of the lasso tool, which is terrible. They should have never even invented that. It's like one of those things you wish they could just take back. What's that?
Erase from history.
That's right. Eliminate it from history. That's about it in the profiles, I suppose. The other thing I like to have open is XREFs. Is external references. So this is something like if you were to import an image or another AutoCAD file that you didn't want to manipulate, but you can scale it and things like that and rotate it, or if you wanted to trace it, you can utilize this to import images, PDFs, things like that. It's more of like, it's not really importing it, it's kind of a link, so you attach the file. So it's not necessarily in the file, which is why you don't necessarily want to attach DWGs, which is the designated file name for when you save an AutoCAD file. But if you were to, for instance, take a drawing that you needed to trace, you could attach the image and then trace it fairly easily in AutoCAD. And PNGs, it's similar to like importing an image to Revit, except it's linked or attached, and so it's constantly looking for that file somewhere else on your hard drive. So I just like to leave all these kind of off to the side. They're kind of quick access toolbars. I'm a little old school. I learned this system without any of this stuff, so for all I know it's quicker to go up to the ribbon and grab it, but I like it on my tool, on these little quick access toolbars. So let's draw a line. And fillet that corner. And let's draw a polyline, and we'll kind of see what the difference is between those two. Just typed in extend. I hate polylines. Basically, this created 4 separate lines, right? Whereas this is all one line. So the main difference between the two is that these are individual line segments. This is one continuous line. The other difference is you can adjust the width of your polyline, and you can also create, if you've drawn separate lines and you want to create one polyline, you can do that as well with the called pedit command, and select multiple. And we can select all 4 of these lines, hit enter, and I want to join them, so yes, or create polylines out of them, I'm sorry. And then we can click J for join, and then, whoops, I exited out of it too quickly. Pedit, multiple, type M instead of selecting that guy. Enter, and J for join, the 0 tolerance. Now I can press escape, and now that's all one line segment. The other difference is that it gives you some points that you can manipulate. So I can convert this to an arc and get a consistent, like a real true radius. You can also stretch vertexes, so you can start to manipulate those points. And what I'm doing is I'm hovering over that node and then allowing this little dialog box to pop up before I select anything. You can also add a vertex, so that adds another line segment. And so the difference between that and a spline, type in spline, you can start, I'm going to probably take my orthographic mode off, but this is drawn, this isn't a true arc here. So if you were like trying to draw contours or things like that and you needed true arcs for contour lines, you wouldn't want to use splines. You'd want to you'd want to use polylines so that you can get true arcs. And these are kind of less manipulative in some respects. It's kind of, I have a love-hate relationship with both polylines and splines. You can still utilize like the trim and extend tool, I'm pretty sure, on both of them, but they're not as easy as lines and circles and arcs. Circles, you can specify the radius, or a 3-point circle, a 2-point circle, tangent radius. So if I were to select TTR, I could start to select 2 tangent points and then type in a radius maybe of 5 feet, and now that basically draws that circle an intersection at the tangent point. Kind of just some interesting, boring things that you can do with this software. Guys are probably all like, I can't wait to get out of this class. Arcs, right? Start to draw all sorts of crazy different styles of arcs. Oh yeah, pedit command. Let's just take a look at that one more time. And I'm just gonna click on that box because it's one line itself. I can type in W and start to change the thickness of that line. See how it changed versus this line? And it's not joined together. You can tell because there's a little chip out of it here. If I click J and select that, should have done it and it didn't. I don't know. At my wit's end with this software right now. I'm really terrible. We never talked about dimensions, did we? Annotation tab. Dimensions. If I start to, no, I don't have a, I'm going to just draw a line. Call that good. The orthographic on. And I'm going to go to annotate and use my dimension tool. Scroll in here, and this is a decimal. And you're like, what do I do with that? It's super tiny too. You can't see it, right? So if you click on the standards button here, and down here you can get manage dimension styles. We can create a new dimension style, and I'm just going to label it copy of standard, hit continue. We can chart changing our primary units to being architectural and the precision that you want to see there, and then the fit. This works in multiples of, so if you want like a 1/4 inch text, you would type in 48 because 12 times 4 is 48. So if you want an 1/8 inch text, you would type in 96. I'd type in 48, click OK, and close. And now if I draw a dimension, it'll start reading kind of normal, right? It's a little bit bigger. We can see that that line is 47 feet 11 9/16 of an inch. If I flip to my paper space, and I'm still in model space, PS for paper space, and I change this to 1/4 of an inch equals a foot, and I'm going to have to pan over, and paper space. You can see that that dimension is legible at 1/4 of an inch equals a foot on my paper space. So if we created one more dimension style and create a new one and type in 96 here. Create another dimension. Got twice as big, right? Because it's now wanting to be at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. It's reading similar in size to what this read at 1/4 of an inch equals a foot on your paper space. So you can change your dimension size to fit whatever scale you're looking at. Hopefully that makes some sense. Text is similar in that respect. I'm not even going to get into that tonight because it's 7 o'clock. At any rate, those are the very basics of Autocad. Hopefully everybody was able to follow along and create that template file for the laser cutter. That's pretty much what's due Thursday night, with the exception of importing a piece of your an elevation view of your Revit model. You're in class assignment 5 and setting it up with the layers that you want. So we'll do that on Thursday. We'll probably get through that fairly quickly, and the rest of the time hopefully will be designated to kind of a lab class for the first time in a long time. So that's it.
Everyone get to sign in?